Well, ladies and gentlemen, we had primaries last night, and as expected, Wyoming Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney has been absolutely brutally defeated in her Republican primary. Did she abandon Republican orthodoxy? Was she pro-choice or against lowering taxes on the rich or any policy? Nope, it wasn't anything like that. She simply said that Donald Trump really did lose the election in 2020. And for that, the MAGA people determined she had to be punished. And she will now be replaced on the November final general election ballot by Harriet Hagemen, an individual whose political views are essentially identical to Liz Cheney's, with the exception that Harriet Hagemen has parroted the claim that Joe Biden didn't really win in November of 2020. And that apparently was a mortal sin. Let's talk about last night's primaries. As the Associated Press reports, Trump foe Cheney loses Wyoming GOP primary, ponders 2024 bid. I don't even care about the 2024 thing for now. She was on with Savannah Guthrie this morning and sort of said, I'm going to think about 24. There's no real need to talk about that right now. A lot of things will happen between now and then. Liz Cheney, Trump's fiercest Republican adversary, writes the AP, in Congress, soundly lost a Republican primary, falling to a rival backed by the former president in a rout that reinforced his grip on the party's base. The third-term Congresswoman and her allies entered Tuesday downbeat about her prospects. And listen, she lost. I mean, I don't even really know what else we need to pull from this. She lost, and she lost very, very significantly. And the reason that she became a target of the MAGA people and of Donald Trump is that she insisted Trump didn't win in 2020. Trump really genuinely lost. She's still a Republican. She still voted the way Trump wanted 93% of the time when she was in Congress and Trump was president. But she says, no, Trump genuinely did lose. And in her concession speech, sort of her speech that she gave, she says, I easily won last time. I could have won again. I just would have had to lie and say that Trump won, and I wasn't willing to do that. Let's listen to what she had to say last night.
2 years ago, I won this primary with 73% of the vote.
True.
I could easily have done the same again. The path was clear. But it would have required that I go along with President Trump's lie about the 2020 election.
Right.
It would have required that I enable his ongoing efforts to unravel our democratic system and attack the foundations of our republic. That was a path I could not and would not take.
The Lincoln Project commented on Liz Cheney's primary loss. That's a group made of sort of non-Trump Republicans for the most part. And they said tonight marks the end of the Republican Party. What remains shares the name of the Republican Party, but it is in fact an authoritarian nationalist cult dedicated only to Donald Trump. So there's really two sides to this. Is it wacky and is it disturbing that this is what the Republican Party has become? Of course it is. Of course it's wacky and disturbing. The goal of the MAGA people is to purge the Republican Party of the critics of Donald Trump, even something as benign as saying the results were the real results. Joe Biden did win, Donald Trump did lose. You've got Adam Kinzinger retiring, Liz Cheney lost her primary. Some of the other Republicans who did vote to convict Trump on that second impeachment trial are either retiring or lost primaries. So it is absolutely crazy that that's the situation. At the same time, it's important to remind you that Liz Cheney mostly voted with Trump, and she's being replaced by someone who will mostly vote in the way that Trump would want, will vote with the Republican Party, whatever. Harriet Hagemen will vote the same way as Liz Cheney on just about every issue. The only difference is Hagemen is willing to repeat the big lie, whereas Liz Cheney was not. So it's also disturbing because on policy, there is essentially no difference between Hagemen and Cheney. They're both against abortion. They're both for, lower taxes for the rich, whatever. The difference is actually just one about this issue where it's about an election that was almost 2 years ago. So that's also sad. Now, these results could potentially backfire, and I'll mention the way in which that could happen. Wyoming's total population is 580,000. No, I'm not saying 580,000 people voted yesterday. I'm not saying there's 580,000 Republicans. The total population of Wyoming is 580,000. Tiny electorate, much more subject to having a primary manipulated by out-of-state money and Trump and the MAGA people. These results could send a signal to the more reasonable Republicans in other parts of the country, to the extent that they exist, and to a little extent they do, that the Republican Party is now the MAGA party. And many Republicans aren't at all in favor of this being a MAGA party. If you're Mitt Romney, for example, it is at this point, thanks to the Democratic Party, that we still even have some semblance of democracy in the United States. But if you're Romney, you should understand that your own party will come for you, at least potentially. And we have to see what the impact is of that on, to the extent that they exist, the more moderate and reasonable Republicans. Now, a couple other elections from last night. Lisa Murkowski also was challenged by a pro-Trump Republican in Alaska in the Senate. She won enough votes to advance to the general election in November in that Senate race. And Sarah Palin, although she did not get the most votes in her Alaska congressional primary yesterday, she also will advance to November. So that's what's going on. And we're going to have it's an open house seat for Sarah Palin, and we will see in November what happens with that. But very disturbing results, that's for sure. One of our longtime sponsors, Splendid Spoon, is giving you $50 off. As many of you know, I am not vegetarian, but I think eating plant-based is a great thing, and I do more of it consciously. Splendid Spoon takes the work out of eating plant-based by delivering ready-to-eat plant-based meals, smoothies, and juices right to your door. Splendid Spoon fits into my day easily. The meals are in my fridge. Put them on the stovetop or in the microwave, and I've got a great, fresh, plant-based meal in a few minutes. It saves me time, which is really useful right now. Whether you're vegan or you just want to add an easy, delicious way to have more plants in your diet, Splendid Spoon is a great way to go. There are great dishes like creamy mushroom and spinach noodles, coconut curry, cauliflower tikka soup. That's one of my favorites. Tons of choices. The menu rotates constantly. I've tried a lot of different meal subscription services. Splendid Spoon is great on both taste and quality. They pack so much flavor into the dishes. They taste freshly cooked. Splendid Spoon's smoothies are awesome when I'm on the go. And you'll get $50 off your first week when you subscribe at splendidspoon.com/Pacman. The link is down below.